All right, so I have another story here that went very underreported because of the whole Kavanaugh controversy, which seems to be the only thing that everyone cares about, the only thing that America cares about. It's the only story that's on Twitter right now, pretty much. You can't really find too many stories outside of the Kavanaugh hearings or the FBI investigation or whatever the case may be. But this particular story was sent to me by a personal friend, and he told me about this story, and I was like, what? I couldn't believe that I heard this. A teacher in Florida said she was fired for giving zeros to students who didn't turn in their work. You can see the chalkboard here, the whiteboard here. It says, "Bye kids, Mrs. Toronto loves you and wishes you the best in life. I've been fired for refusing to give you 50% for not handing anything in. Love, Mrs. Toronto." Now, this is from Port St. Lucie, Florida here. A Port St. Lucie teacher claims she was fired for giving students partial credit for work that is never handed in. She says, "I got fired, I was packing my stuff, and I was not going to see the kids," Diane Torado said. Mrs. Torado didn't get to say goodbye to her students physically, so she wrote her message on a whiteboard instead. She snapped a photo of it, shared it on Facebook, then the messages from her 8th grade students started pouring in. Quote, "You showed me to be responsible for my work and the things that I do. I hope you don't forget me," one student wrote. Mrs. Torado has been a teacher for more than 17 years. The 52-year-old began working at Westgate K-8 school this year as an 8th grade social studies teacher. She said she gave her students 2 weeks to complete an explorer's notebook project, but said some of them didn't even turn it in. That's when she learned about the school's no-zero grading policy, written in red in the school's handbook stating no zeros. Lowest grade possible is 50%. Tirado says this sends the wrong message. If there's nothing to grade, how can I give someone a 50%, she asked. So this is what's going on in schools all across the country. This is not just this school in St. Port Lucie, Florida. No, this is not just this school. There's other schools, including the schools that my kids go to, the school that my kids go to, where the grading policy is changing to not make the kids feel too upset because they failed their test or they failed their homework or they failed their schoolwork. Now, well, this one is a little bit way out there here. The lowest possible grade is 50%. So you can get credit for not turning anything in at this school. You get credit for not turning anything in. And this is a big problem here in our society. And I think that this is what's leading most of our children and leading most of our society to become these crazy feminist, leftist, liberal protesters dancing in the street in thongs. I mean, this is really what's leading to this chaos that we're seeing right now. This is really what's leading to this cold civil war that a lot of people say that we are in. And a lot of it has to do right when you start school, right when you start, and even in the home. Even in the home, I think that the lack of discipline happening, especially with the millennial generation, them raising kids. I am one millennial. I am one of those millennials, but I am different. I think that it starts at a very young age, and I think that we're seeing the results of this today, the results of this madness today, as we watch the TV in awe at the edge of our seats. It goes on to say her September 14 termination letter doesn't cite specific reason, only stating that she was contracted as a teacher on a probation period and that she can be dismissed without cause. Her message on her classroom's whiteboard has been shared hundreds of times with messages from other parents and teachers congratulating her on standing her ground. Tonight she is calling for change because she believes that grading policy at the Westgate K-8 school won't help students in the long run. She says, quote, "I'm arguing the fact that you don't get something for nothing. I want the policy changed, and it's not just here," she says. And she's right, it's not just here. In the school that my kids go to, they are changing the grading policy from the 100% type of a thing that you normally see, or the ABCD type of a thing that you normally see, to 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 being the best, 3 being I don't know what they're doing, honestly. I don't understand it. My daughter tried to explain it to me, and I told her that you tell your teacher, I want original grading policies, or you're not going, or I'm going to pull you out of school. I'm going to pull you out of school. And I told her this. If she doesn't tell her teacher this, then I'm going to have to go to the office and start talking to these teachers, start talking to these principals, and pull my kids out of school and homeschool them. Which, by the way, if you can do, I recommend it strongly. Also, don't go to college. Do not go to college. there's no point in it anymore. Unless you're going for a trade to a trade school or something like that to get to where you're going to have you're going to be assured a job in the end of it. You're going for a particular reason. Otherwise, other than that, don't rack up $100,000 to be taught about feminist gender studies or something like that. Don't rack up $100,000 to go take philosophy or some bullshit like that that you can't get a job and you can't pay your bills with. Everything outside of the trades, the trade schools, don't even bother with. It goes on to say here, there are zeros found in the grading scale above the no zeros wording on the Westgate Student and Parent Handbook, which adds confusion, Tirado said. CBS 12 News is still waiting to hear back from St. Louis Public Schools as of late Monday night. You're probably not going to hear back from him. Good luck with that. Okay, so in the 1970s, I believe it was, 1979, maybe late 70s, whenever Jimmy Carter was about to leave office, you had the Department of Public Education, right? You had the Department, what was it? Department of Education that was formed. This was formed under Jimmy Carter. This is what Betsy DeVos runs right now. This particular government institution, which controls all of the public education pretty much in America, controls a lot of different facets of it, basically runs it, is unconstitutional. The Department of Education is completely 100% unconstitutional. They get $70 billion a year. $70 billion a year, plus all of the lottery money and whatever else goes to education. For what? For shittier grades than we had, for shittier test scores than we had 20 years ago, for worse schools that we had 20 years ago, for this, for giving them 50% credit for handing in nothing, for what we're seeing in the universities that are also publicly funded. No, we pay your bills. We pay your salary, teachers. You are not going to give our students credit for handing in nothing. Sorry about that, but I'm going to pull my kids out of school if you keep doing this. And I recommend everyone who's a parent out there watching this as well, do the same thing. Maybe ask your kid, because you might not know what's going on in school. You might not know that they changed the grading policy across the country. So I would actually ask your children, ask them if they did in fact change the grading policy to this 1, 2, 3, 4, or the 50% for turning nothing in, and make sure that you get involved in the educational matters of your children, because the government fails at everything it tries to do. We know that from every time we go and visit the DMV. The government fails at everything it tries to do and everything it tries to control. And I would be happier, I think we would be much better off if communities were to take control of the schools once again. Communities, families were to take control of education once again of our students, instead of the federal government and the state governments, which are doing a shitty job as well. I mean, even just giving it back to the states would probably be better than the federal government overseeing a lot of the things that happen with public education. So get involved with what your students are bringing home. Look at their homework. Ask them about their grading scales. Ask them about what they're learning in school. Look at their history books especially. And just make sure that that none of this ridiculousness is going on with your children.